Elijah Morrill Shaw, known as E.M. Shaw, came into the world in July 1826 with his twin brother Thomas. E.M. and Thomas were born in Kensington, New Hampshire, at a dairy farm now known as Shaw Hill Farm. His father, John Ware Shaw, was a descendant of Roger Shaw, who immigrated from Scotland to Boston 200 years earlier in the 1630s. E.M. was a diligent and mechanically minded person in his childhood, and this served him well when he left the family farm and pursued a career in the cotton and woolen mills that were growing rapidly in New England during those times. His career in the mills took him from Exeter, New Hampshire to Newburyport, Massachusetts, Great Falls, New Hampshire, Saratoga, New York, and then Lewiston, Maine, where he was overseer of the Bates Woolen Mills. In 1861, as the United States plunged into a civil war, E.M. enlisted in the Army and proceeded to serve in the 1st, 10th, and 29th Maine Regiments. In October of 1861, Elijah Morrill Shaw was made adjutant of the 10th Maine Regiment, and several months later he was promoted to captain. The 10th Maine Regiment played an important role in the Civil War. E.M. and his fellow members of the regiment traveled by train from Maine to Washington, D.C., and then were deployed to Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. There they engaged in battles that influenced the outcome of the war. These included Winchester and Antietam. The story of the 10th Maine is well known to Nicholas Paserno, chief of police at Bridgewater College in Virginia. Paserno is a Civil War historian who has served as chair of the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation. In the past several decades, he's collected more than 25,000 items from the 10th Maine Regiment, and he has developed an exceptional knowledge of certain members of the 10th, including Elijah Morrill Shaw.
Well, he was mustered in the fall of 1861, and he was mustered in. He was appointed adjutant by the colonel of the regiment, George Lafayette Beale. And as Colonel George Beale mentioned that when they were guarding the railroad relays, they were guarding the most important road in the world. The reason being that every man who was going to fight for the North to get south had to go through relay. And they had to keep that area free and to keep their trains running and tracks free from any damage or sabotage. But as far as major battles, the first one would be on May 25th, 1862. And that would be the Battle of First Winchester. They're under the command of Nathaniel Prentice Banks, former governor of Massachusetts. Stonewall Jackson is headed down the valley. He's coming upon Winchester. Banks knew that they had to leave Winchester and head north, and they planned to head to Williamsport, Maryland. E.M. and the men of the 10th Maine was the last regiment that Banks left to protect the retreat of his army as they headed north. E.M. was there. The next battle is September 17th, 1862, the Battle of Antietam. They're advancing to a location called the East Woods.
The September 1862 Battle of Antietam Creek near Sharpsburg, Maryland, was of great historical significance for several reasons. For the North, it was a badly needed victory that turned away a major Confederate invasion. After poor showings in numerous battles, the Army of the Potomac under General George McClellan finally showed that it was capable of being effective against Confederate forces under Robert E. Lee. Following the pivotal Battle of Antietam Creek, Lee's forces withdrew back to the south across the Potomac River. This marginal victory by the North also gave President Lincoln an opportunity to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. But Antietam was and is also notable as the bloodiest day in American history. Casualties in a single day of savage fighting exceeded 23,000 lives. Nearly 1 in 4 soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured. Photographs of the battlefield shocked the nation. In his diary of the 10th Maine, John Meade Gould recounted the terrible impact of the battle on his regiment, noting that 21 of 208 soldiers had been killed and 5 times that number wounded. Gould wrote, "The devilry of the day is too tremendous to calculate."
After the Battle of Antietam, they lost quite a number of their men. They had to recoup, and they were sent to Stafford, Virginia. And they stayed in Stafford, Virginia through the spring of 1863, and they were mustered out on May 8th, 1863. George Beale had a great friendship with E.M., relied on him a great deal. E.M. was certainly committed to excellence as adjutant. Other men of his company, thought a great deal of him, because you'll read some of the letters I have that they'll talk about him.
After the war, E.M. returned to the textile mills of New England, expanding operations in Lawrence, Massachusetts, Lisbon, Maine, and eventually Nashua, New Hampshire, where he was engaged as agent for the Nashua Manufacturing Company. While in Nashua, E.M. served in numerous civic positions, including founding president of the Nashua YMCA, and he donated his summer cottage on Lake Natticook near Nashua to the YMCA, and this became Camp Sargent, which we attended as children. E.M. served as business manager of Colby Academy. After a full life, E.M. died in his sleep at the Old Kensington Farm in 1903. His memoirs note an important guiding principle in his life. He expressed it this way: "What I ought to do, I will.